Welcome to PopCast, the crowd-sponsored yo-yo show. Huge shout-out to John Anderson and Tucker from Spin Gear and my 92 other sponsors over on patreon.com/DocPop. My name is Doc. I'm a professional yo-yoer that got started, I think, in 98 on my 21st birthday. And today I've got a special guest on the show who has had a huge personal impact on me and an impact on the yo-yo community. But I don't think that that I've chatted with him in 20 years, and definitely time to fix that. Lao, how are you doing today?
Well, hey, I'm great. Excited to be here, Doc. Good to see you again, man. It's been a long time.
Yeah. Lao, can you help me pronounce your last name?
All of us?
All of
us.
Right on.
If you have a weird name, you kind of learn ways of dealing with it. And people always go, "Yeah, how'd you get your name?" And I go, "My parents gave it to me." A real deadpan, and that seems to solve the problem pretty quickly.
Yeah. With a name like Dr. Popular, I get a lot of strange looks as well, and a lot of explaining I have to do. 1998, I think, was the year I got into yo-yoing. It was on my 21st birthday, and I was working retail for a yo-yo shop. And it sounds kind of similar to how you got into yo-yoing, right? You started off working with Infinite Illusions.
So I started juggling in high school in like '94, and the local store that sold juggling equipment also sold a ton of yo-yo stuff. Was called Lofty Pursuits, which all I knew was that it was a storefront, right? But it turned out that it was also the international mail order company Yo-Yo Guy / Infinite Illusions, aka Infinite Illusions. They were making their own juggling torches, a number of other things, but they had a really massive yo-yo selection. I think at the time it was the largest mail order yo-yo company in the world. And I don't think that was saying much in December of '97, right? I think that wasn't saying much at all. There wasn't a lot of mail order happening. And so I got a job working there. I replaced Steve Brown, who, is the creator of Offstring or Freehand. And I'd been kind of going in and getting tricks off him, juggling stuff primarily. And then when I took over his position, I realized that yo-yoing was a really big part of what they were doing, especially the mail order side. So I started really digging into that and expanding my skill set that direction.
So that was 98?
That would have been, I started December of '97.
97, okay.
So I caught the kind of the yo-yo Christmas boom. And I believe, if I wasn't really in it in '96, but if I'm not mistaken, that winter, that Christmas, was the beginning of that kind of second revolution in yo-yoing and the big boom that followed.
Yeah, this is kind of a fun thing. Ever since Pedro Flores created the modern yo-yo, the sleeping yo-yo. Pedro was a Filipino American immigrant living in LA, created this thing. Duncan bought it years later. And there was this kind of regularly recurring boom that happened. I think it was super weird. It was like every 7 years there would be a nationwide boom. It's like the locust, right? Like, this like kind of like big thing would happen.
We go back to the ground.
Yeah. But on top of that, there was also these regional booms that were sustained and planned. So the regions were split, I believe, into 4 parts. The U.S. was split into 4 parts. And then there was like Duncan in the U.S. and then Russell outside. And so they would do the East Coast and they do the South and they do the Midwest and they do the West Coast. So wherever you lived, it felt like there was a boom every 4 years. And if you happen to live where that boom was, that local boom, plus the 7-year, then it felt like the biggest thing in the world or whatever. And this was kind of like this regularly recurring, very sustainable thing that worked all the way up until TV came out. And I'm totally nerding out. Like, this isn't what I meant to talk about, but like when
this is news to me. I don't know the depth of it.
Yeah, so like there was a boom in the 70s. There was this massive boom, and then in the 80s, Duncan went all in on TV commercials. They fired all the pros except for Arnie Dixon. He just went really hardcore on TV, and they put all their budget into TV. They had a huge boom, and then the next year, yo-yoing was a fad. And there was not a region to go to, right? Because they did it nationally. So they kind of overmined, their resources. And there wasn't a boom from and that was even kind of a small boom. So there really wasn't a boom from the 80s and all the way through the 90s up until, as you said, I think there was the start of one in '97. '98 was sort of like Pacific and kind of West Coast. And then '99 was the big boom. And I got into yo-yoing in '98 during that first boom, and I was just working shops, yo-yo shops. And you actually got to do something really cool because you were at the right place at the right time. And Greg was the largest online yo-yo retailer, which is kind of funny. That wasn't really saying much at the time. It was like selling like 5 yo-yos a month or whatever, who knows. But then it became huge and Greg was ready for it. And there was all sorts of things happening that it's just hard to think about now. There was a yo-yo magazine, right?
Right. So I went digging a little bit, right, to see what memorabilia I still got, and that's one of the items I have. So do you have a copy of it?
Yeah, I got a copy over here somewhere.
Okay. So this is the one that led into Warped Tour, right? And Greg, the owner of Yo-Yo Guy, was always very good at getting things to happen. I remember listening to him developing this plan to send yo-yo demonstrators in the Warped Tour in that summer of '99, and I was listening to him, and what he's doing is telling all the manufacturers that it's already happening, right? And I just remember kind of hearing these whispers, around and he was just like, "Oh, it's gonna be great. We got da 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 da." That wasn't how, it wasn't all set up that well, but anyways, he made it happen, and he made this magazine happen. There's me over in the corner here with my long hair doing, I think it's what is that? Some kind of trapeze, it's like a trapeze Eiffel Tower maybe or something. Anyways, and this. Then every Blockbuster in America briefly. And I remember seeing it local Blockbuster and just being kind of blown away. I don't think it didn't last for very long, but it was he got himself in, but to the Warped Tour, right? So he started planning that whole that summer of extreme yo-yo, and man, it was a wild time.
That was a wild time. The brain felt like what sort of inspired that comeback, that yo-yo boom. And so Yomega was kind of like the one selling the brain, but it was really neat to see this other infrastructure like Fiend magazine and Pro Yo and all that stuff, be able to take advantage of it.
What I remember from big yo-yos at the time, what I remember being really big at the time were Bearing Raiders, right? Yomega Raiders. And then they came out with Butterfly Bumblebees a little bit before that. Big deal, right?
The Butterbee.
Those were kind of, I was getting in like 98. I remember going, that was a big deal. Those were selling out. That was what was really hot at the time.
So somehow, in some alternate universe, there was a bunch of professional yo-yoers on a punk and hip hop tour, like the biggest tour in the world. That's so crazy to me. You were the managing it. You were on the tour as well. What was that like?
Right. Well, I was the only person working for the Yo-Yo Guy at the time. So Greg reached out to the different manufacturers and said, "Hey, this is happening," and he was talking to the Warped Tour and getting this plan together. So he had me kind of on there as a demonstrator and then also running the day to day. And it was wild. Me, Steve Brown, and Mark McBride drove from Tallahassee, went to Graceland, and then went over to San Antonio, Texas, which is where the first gig was. And met the other demonstrators. Do you have a list in front of you?
No. I remember some of them. I don't have a list handy. I didn't do any prep for this.
Sure. Well, it was Rick Wyatt, and it was Jason. What's the guy's name? Jason
Kalakis?
I've got one of his yo-yos.
Yeah, right? The Space Otter. Calcanis?
I can't remember. It was what's the guy that came from Yomega? Not Johans, but the other guy. We got to get the name down. Brown, obviously. Who was the guy that was down from I don't know, it's a long time ago now.
Julius.
I don't keep in touch with Julius. That's who.
Yeah, from Pro Yo. And who is Rick? Who is Rick repping? Yomega?
Rick Wyatt was. Yeah, I'm thinking Yomega probably. Right, I'm still in touch with him. He's around. Yeah, something like that. Well, I'm sorry. Duh. I showed you. There it is, right there. There's the guys. There's the original crew. Rick Wyatt. Yeah, that's the crew. Okay. Julius. Yeah, that was the one I was missing. And the other one was Jason Tracy. That was
Jason Tracy with the Space Otters. And
right.
He would have been BC Tumkun.
Good call. So that was the crew. So we met up, and I remember we met in San Antonio. We went out to this restaurant before the tour started, and it was Dick's, I think it was called, something like that. It was like, the waitress would treat you terribly and that kind of thing. And the food's, awful and overpriced kind of place, you know what I'm saying? The boardwalk kind of area,
Yeah.
And we're over there all hanging out. We're all like 20, 22, somewhere in that range. And somebody's got this, blue hair. Somebody's got, we looked like we were on the road, and everybody knew that the Warped Tour was in town, I think. So we had somebody comes in and is like, hey, y'all in a band? It's like one of the first memories I have of like having the whole crew together. It's like, y'all on the band, y'all on Warped Tour or something like that? And I don't know who it was, but somebody goes, oh, we're Pennywise. And I was like, what are y'all doing? And next thing you know, like all the other kind of wait staff start kind of, whispering, and they're all and they come over and they want to hang out with us. And this is like, okay. And then I remember having this like minor fear that Pennywise would find out while we were on tour. I mean, like, I'm gonna give us a licking or something. Beat up them yo-yo boys that are making a fool of us. I don't know. Anyways, but that was kind of my first memory of hanging out with the crew from the Warped Tour. And we went on and then tour. Yeah.
You don't know this, but Pennywise were actually pretending to be the Yo-Yo Pros in another restaurant. That did not go as well.
Everybody wanted to be the Yo-Yo Pros. Well, it was pretty wild. I mean, we get on there. We're on this tour for 6 weeks, and we got Mondays off. And I remember trying to describe it later and saying, basically, you wake up, you get off the bus, and you go, all right, we're in San Francisco. And you go and you set up the stage, and you set up the 10 by 10s, and you have some breakfast, and you come and you do your song and dance, and you're showing up. Then you have this time to do whatever, and then you get back on the bus, and you go to sleep, and you wake up, and you go, guess we're in L.A. And that was our life for 6 weeks with Mondays off. So, yeah, really wild time. It started in San Antonio, moved through Texas a little bit, and then crossed over to the West Coast and kind of back and forth and up into Canada and all the way back around the East Coast and ended down in West Palm Beach.
So it was a bus full of yo-yoers. Were there other people on the bus too?
They crammed us on with the Vans shoe company people. So it was like the people that were giving away or selling Vans shoes. Mm-hmm. So we hung out with them. Yeah, there was a handful of them. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but we had a handful of them on our bus. I'm sure they were probably complaining to somebody.
Yeah.
We were happy to have a fun, but I assume they were complaining to somebody behind the scenes.
So it's still, like I said, it's insane that there is a world that many yo-yo players now could never even imagine, these like, all the yo-yo pros. Like I can't imagine what that would be like now if all the yo-yo pros were on like a music tour. And I think it was on this tour that Rick Wyatt and Julius got on stage with Ice-T.
Yeah, that was a big moment. Well, as the tour progressed, we got a lot of invitations. We made some good connections. A lot of the bands were happy to have us around. And I remember at one point we had these Omega slings, right? These big oval slings that had a strap and foam,
mm-hmm.
And we went and we filled them. We had a ton of merch. I mean, all the companies sent us these big boxes. We had drops happening all the time. We had a lot of stuff to give away. So we filled them all with different yo-yos, and we gave them to all the bands. And it made us all kinds of neat connections. So a lot of folks would have us on stage. And the big one of the big holdouts, it seemed like, was Ice-T, and nobody thought we'd get an Ice-T stage, But I've got a picture. I could bring it out somewhere, but I've got a picture of Ice-T throwing a yo-yo at our booth, and like his big bodyguard is there, and this woman. He'd come by at some point, and I guess Rick Wyatt started conversations with him, and I didn't even know it was going down. But yeah, like he's up on stage. I think it was San Diego. I feel like it's a big outdoor venue, and he goes, "Hey, I want you to meet my OG," something like that. And Rick Wyatt comes out. He's got a blue bandana on. I mean, it's a huge audience. It was wild. That was one of the we didn't expect to get on that. I remember Seven Dust was on the tour, and he was really digging it. So he invited people to yo-yo, and I remember I wasn't up there, but some of the other guys were like, "Yeah, I don't know, it's a little heavy for yo-yoing," just trying to get up on and come out of it. It's just so fast. Like I don't really know how to handle that. It's not really my speed.
Y'all started in San Antonio. Y'all drove around. I'm not sure how many stops it was before you got to St. Louis, but that's where I caught you. And like I said, I'd been yo-yoing for about a year. I was started off as sales for this place called Yo Mama's Yo-Yo Store, and ended up getting promoted to manager and then like regional manager. And we just opened this store in St. Louis, our first one kind of outside of like the East Coast. I was broke as hell. I spent my first 2 months in St. Louis living in my car. And that was partially okay because I was also working every single day, like working the mall, right? Like no days off or whatever. So, and I had nothing on my own.
You were working? Is that what it was? Like a rolly kiosk?
Yeah, like a kiosk. Yeah. Yeah. I had a kiosk in front of the Spencer's Gifts. Yeah, classic 90s mall. Yeah.
And kids are coming by all day long trying to convince the moms to buy them some yo-yos. I love it, dude. So sick. My mom was dead now. It was a big thing back then.
Yeah. And that's, I always hung out in malls before that. So like transitioning from a mall rat to like an employee, working a kiosk at the mall was pretty natural.
Hey, gig.
Yeah. So I think when y'all came to town, tickets were like $22, not a lot for like a festival. It was the first time I ever went to any sort of festival like that. And I was able to kick that. But I just got my own trailer finally, like a trailer home that I was renting. So I was pretty much like cashless. When y'all came to town, I was like scraping change for the gas, like to get to there. And I didn't know, and this is all my fault, but like it's 99. I didn't have internet. I didn't have a way to check this. I didn't know when you get to the festival, on top of the $22 ticket, they charge you $20 to park. And I did not have $20 to my name. I spent literally the $1.75 that I had in my whole life, to get gas.
Was your company our rep for that city? Because I might have messed you up there. I don't even know.
No.
Greg set up this. Okay. Well, Greg had set up a system where we had these contacts, not every city, but any city that had made a yo-yo retailer or something like that. He had set these contacts so they could kind of come and send their people over and hang out with us and this whole thing. And I was in charge of making those calls like the night before or something like that. Hey, my name's Lao. Tomorrow I'll meet you with da-da-da. I got the passes for you, da-da-da. And I got to say, I don't know, the tour rolled on for a while. I'm not sure I was always great at communicating with all the people. It didn't become a super high priority of mine. I probably could have prioritized a little bit better, but I'm glad I didn't stick you with that bill there, and I didn't know if I had tickets for parking.
I'm trying to remember now. I think I bought tickets on my own, but yeah, no, we didn't. I don't remember chatting, beforehand. So long story short, I parked a mile away. The first public street that I could find, parked there. Saw other people doing the same thing. And you could see the amphitheater from where we parked, although it was, quite a few turns away. So we just walked straight, like a straight line through what looked like a cornfield or something. It turned out it was a swamp.
Oh, no.
So yeah, dude. Yeah, it was just, my day was not great. It was, it is kind of every now and then, especially when you're young, you kind of get to that point where you're at $0 in your bank account or -20 or whatever, right? And those days are pretty low. And then there's these things on top of that, $20 to park or something, just things you're I thought I planned, I didn't know, so it was just a low day. And I was finally going to meet, I hadn't met Steve or Jason or Rick. I hadn't met any of those dudes before. I was finally going to meet them. It was hot as hell. And I have a feeling it was pretty late on the tour because everyone just seemed kind of done. I was terrible. I was just in the worst mood. Yeah.
My interlude, from my perspective, there was this build, we're kind of figuring out how to do it. How are we going to entertain? How are we going to give all this stuff away? What was our format? So there's a lot of just kind of figuring it out for a while. And then it got really fun for a little while. And then, I don't know, there was a week or two where it's kind of definitely towards the end of our energy for it. And then I remember being we only got a week or two left. I was all right, let's get, just got this new burst of energy. So you might have got us in this little lull where we've just been kind of for a while. And
I was having a rough day, and it was hot. It was just, it might have been, it was during the summer, so every stop might have been hot. But it was just not, it was not awesome for me. And, I talked to people a little bit. No one was super rude, but no one seemed as excited to see me as I was excited to see them. And it just was not going anywhere. So eventually I left. I did get some swag. And as I was leaving, I bumped into you in the parking lot I don't think we talked inside, but I don't even know. You must have seen me yo-yoing, and you came up and talked to me, and I just remember this highlight of the day was talking to you. You were like, like I said, everyone was pretty low energy, and I was not, like putting out great energy, maybe too, right? And I just remember you were like, not just zen, but like really upbeat, and just like really like made the whole terrible day was totally worth it to hang out with you.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad you have that memory. I don't remember the conversation, but what I remember was watching yo-yo and being like, wow, this guy's got a lot of really original style, and a lot of original tricks. I feel like I was so in the mix at the time, and back then, unlike now, it's like there was a finite number of tricks to learn in some ways, wasn't there? I mean, the time period was kind of like, here's the new big stuff coming out, and everybody can kind of keep up. I mean, it's not on the internet, but it spreads if you're in the scene. It's like, okay, here's a new thing. Okay, I'll learn that. It seemed like everybody, if you're really in the mix, you could keep up. And then I watched you play. I was like, well, I don't know a lot of what that dude's doing right now, So I remember being impressed, man. You definitely had your own thing going,
You were super excited about throwing tops. I think Diablo. We talked about Diablo, and we talked yo-yo a little bit, but I could tell that you were like mostly into other stuff. And I kind of remember tops being your big thing. Was that sort of your specialty at the time?
Definitely. I mean, I've done it all. I've done a lot of it. I've done a lot of ball club boxes. I've done kind of I've done most of it, of the stuff under the juggling umbrella. But I may have been pretty deep in the tops at the time. That's very possible. Yeah. My little claim to fame, I have, honestly, I got nothing. Nothing that I did with yo-yo stuck around anybody cared about. But my little claim to fame is a trick corkscrew with a top. So I don't know if you know that. That's my little invention. But yeah, right. Yeah. So the year that the yo-yo world competition was held in Orlando, I think 2000 maybe, which was I think that's what it was. It was kind of like the end of me being kind of in that scene. Really, I had invented that trick because Duncan. We're getting a little sidetracked with the stories, but Duncan had made the Bearing King, right? Mm-hmm. And Steve and I were buddies, and he was working for Duncan. So I got a bunch of prototypes of Bearing Kings before anybody else. I've still got them. I got a bunch of old prototypes. So I got to work with that top before it was on the market. So a lot of things that anybody would have figured out, I figured out first, just because I had first dibs, And one of those things, I'm sure somebody would have figured it out, was corkscrew. And I had figured it out, and then I go to Worlds that year in Orlando, and I showed it to Steve, and Steve wants to go show it to everybody. I'm like, whoa, bro, you can't be showing off my trick, But it got filmed. And that footage. Where did that footage end up? That footage got out there somehow, and I had a guy, Tao, who's a big top guy and runs the board. He contacted me a while back, and he was like, there was some discussion about it because the original video had me wrapping the string the opposite direction instead of throwing it over the way, which is traditional now. And he was like, hey, somehow got back to me. I said, well, I just figured it out, and it seemed a lot easier to do it with one hand or to wrap this way instead of having to throw it over. So that's why I did it that way. I hadn't figured out the other way was easier yet. But anyways, that was kind of the original time. The first time that trick was exposed to the world. That world is, I think, 2000.
You're blowing my mind because I don't throw a lot of tops, but that's like a fundamental. That's like the brain twister of tops or whatever. Maybe split the atom.
Right. I remember years later, somebody sent me a video of a guy, maybe Montreal, he was speaking French Canadian, and he was talking to a news on the news, and he was demonstrating my trick. I was like, wow, okay. That was kind of the first time I'd seen it worldwide,
It's funny that you mentioned the ball bearing tops because I didn't really know anything about tops, and I didn't know how new they were at the time. But you're saying the ball bearing top you got a prototype of, and you showed me a trick that was super specifically post bearing top. Like it couldn't have been done with anything else. Do you remember the trick where you sort of you have the top, you get it, I don't know what it's called, kind of like on the trapeze or whatever, where it's kind of like wrapped around one side. It's kind of like you're holding both ends of the string and the top's like kind of locked in, and then you pull and it flipped. Do you remember that?
So you're talking about, I called it gyroscopic flop, and you then took that trick and converted to yo-yos shortly thereafter, did you not?
You're right. Like that day, like that minute, you showed it to me, and I'm like, okay, boom, and I pulled, and you were like, oh, you've already been doing that, because it looked like I'd been doing it forever. I'm like, nope, I just literally copied you.
That's quite a moment then, isn't it? I remember seeing some video a few years after that and doing that. I started seeing some variations. I was still kind of seeing some of what was happening in the yo community and being like, that is off of gyroscopic flop for sure. And I saw you did. I was like thinking, I wonder if it came off of the trick because you called it that. I'm like, I think we collaborated on that. I wasn't like 100% sure, but I'm like, I think we collaborated on that. That's a cool moment.
Yeah, I didn't know. I don't remember you telling me the name of the trick, so I thought I came up with the term gyroscopic flop. So today's the day I'm learning that I stole the name gyroscopic flop from you, as well as like, I mean, I always try to tell everybody any chance I get that like this was a top trick that I ripped off. I didn't. Did you create that trick then?
Yeah, so that's a perfect example of a trick that I just went around the bearing top. Well, because I mean, the classic trick is string walker, where you route the string around with a fixed tip and it runs
string
across,
walker.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
String walker, right? Or a tightrope, maybe it's called, something like that, right? But anyway, so I'm like thinking about that. So I did the wrap and I just kind of shifted it. I'm like, kind of interesting, kind of holding it, and then I gave it a tug and it started, there you go. So again, like I just the fact that I had the chance first, somebody would have figured that out pretty quickly, but I just had the chance first. So there's quite a few things like that. I call it 13th floor where you do that and you shift it and then it goes down the string. Just a bunch of little, just manipulations that weren't possible without a bearing that kind of had first dibs on. I ended up working on the Yo-Yo Jam top a little bit later on as well. I did a little bit of work for those guys. I did a summer after Warp Tour, the Yo-Yo Jam. What's the guy's name? I can't remember his name, but he hired me to do the Great Race, the big classic car race thing. And so I did that, and I've been communicating with him about tops because he wanted to do a bearing top, but he sent me one, and only the very bottom part of the tip spun on the bearing. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine that?
That was weird. No, I got that.
You can still wire walker, but you don't have any other advantage of that except for longer spin, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, that's not what you're trying to do, So it's kind of interesting being working for the yo guy. Put me in really interesting situations, kind of put me right in the middle of a lot of stuff.
Yeah, dude. So I just want to reiterate the corkscrew. I didn't know was your trick. Boom, mind's blown. And gyroscopic flop, you definitely showed it to me. I didn't know that you kind of created that one too. And I kind of thought about it. It really couldn't have been done. It could have been done with a yo-yo, but like there's a lot of yo-yo tricks that were copied from Diablo. And that's one I've tried to do a million times, and it's super hard to do that. Like it seemed like the evolution of that trick had to come from the top getting a ball bearing tip, and then someone like learned how to flip it, and then someone with the yo-yo said, "Oh, cool," and like it seemed like that's just the way that had to go. It couldn't have gone any other way.
I mean, I know it still happens in the yo-yo community, and now it's much more rapid. But that's one thing I've always loved about juggling in general and the yo-yo community specifically is somebody gets an idea, and that idea starts generating all these other ideas. I remember that time period, Eli Hops, that guy, Eli, I don't know his last name, but that guy came by the tour and showed us that trick, Eli Hops. We were all like, what? He always doing was the basic. And now it's, right? Like, wow, it's just amazing like how that stuff progresses. I find that fascinating.
So, yeah, thank you for gyroscopic flop. I'm trying to think of like you are the creator of gyroscopic flop for top, and I ripped you off for the yo-yo. So I'm trying to think like, are you a co-creator of this? Or like, I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, but like, I definitely want you to get the props you deserve.
You're welcome to put an asterisk, if you ever think about it. But no, I think that's the nature of these props is, that we all steal, but I prefer the word borrow, I guess. Borrow ideas or get inspiration is a better way to look at it. Get inspiration from other people's tricks and then, make them bigger, badder, more interesting. And that's the progression. It's a beautiful thing.
So, like I said, it was one of the worst days, kind of one of the lowest points of my life, just like that day being too broke to, park my car to go to this thing. And it just got worse and worse and worse. And then this, like, I feel like it was just 15 minutes we were hanging out, it wasn't hours. And I just feel like I got so much, good vibes like from that, and like, just such a good experience. I feel like I'm like still writing on like, I remember that like the worst day of my life, and then like that 15 minutes with Lao, which was like super great, So I not only were you like an inspiration for the gyroscopic flop, but I think also like I just whenever I can, I try to think if I'm a pro somewhere, I want to be like Lao, right? I want to be like that, like that experience for whoever, was having a rough day or whatever. But I can't always because I'm, a human, but like I really appreciated that. That was super fun. And the yo-yo community owes you a lot, and the top community apparently needs to build you a statue.
Yeah. Well, I guess for a while at the World Yo-Yo Competition, they were also doing corkscrew challenges and trying to get like max
Mm-hmm.
on, I think the record 14, 15, or I don't know. Somebody sent me a video of that a while back, so it's got staying power, it seems like. Well, I brought some other memorabilia. Do you want to see some stuff from the tour?
Yeah.
All right. So, I don't know how I've held on to all these years, but I did hold on to 2 different tour shirts. There's the green one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great
and there's the red one. I don't know how I saved a lot of the space. I don't have a wife. That helps. The magazine, we pointed out here's some stickers from the tour that I held on to, junk box.
Wow.
They're pretty cool.
Wow. 6
right?
yo pros.
Yeah. That one's pretty cool. And then there's another one.
This is all, we got to give a shout out to Mark McBride, I think, for this art.
From 1999. You were a good self-promoter back then, buddy.
Show that sticker again. I want to see that Doc Pop sticker. I just want to say I went to Kinko's with with 2 Duncan stickers, and I cut the U. So that's how I created the first O. Like literally on a photocopier, it's 2 U's, and then you look at the O.
Shapes.
Yeah, the O is 2 C's. So I took 2 C's from Duncan and 2 U's from Duncan, and I literally, and who knows how I created the P's. But yeah, that's how I just literally copy pasted. They're not copy pasted. Cut that up. Before computers, right? So.
Well, here's one. I really love these a lot, and I've got quite a few of these still. But this is the patch that was made. Now, I don't know who put patches on stuff. Some people do, but it's actually a really nice patch. So I always thought those were really freaking cool, and I always thought, boy, if I was a child, if it was the 80s and I had a jean jacket, this would go on it. The last piece is I got this official lanyard. So this was the lanyard that I actually wore on the Warped Tour, and there's my official backstage pass, full access.
Wow.
It says all of us yo-yo on the back. And Spawn was on the tour, and I was a big Spawn comic book fan at the time. Yeah. So I made buddies with that. So I got this lanyard from him, and he gave me, I remember at the end I had like a plastic trash bag full of Spawn figures. And then the grand prize, somehow I got a hold of this, I think in mid-tour, and never gave it back. This is the official Warped Tour van beer pass. And you could get a case of Paps for your van every night, and they would stamp you. So yeah, nice. I got that one. I think that's about what I kept. Oh, and one more thing, I forgot to grab it. Hold on.
A few moments later,
there was we were set up in the kind of merch area, and there was a company there called Question Authority, I think it was called, and they made hemp clothing, which was I don't think at the time I ever even heard of hemp clothing. And they had one of the tour jackets there. They had been commissioned to make the tour jackets. There's the official Warped Tour 99 Vans tour jacket. It's got, this is like, it's got the, right?
Yeah.
And it's like 80% hemp.
Out of hemp.
So I'd see it, I was like, wow, that freaking jacket's super cool. And he was like, oh, sorry, man. It's like only the people, they give it to I think the bus drivers or roadies or something like that. I was like, all right. And days later, I came back to the tent, our little tent set up, and one of the jackets was sitting there. I'm like, hey, what's this? And they're like, it's yours. Like, what? Like Mark and all those guys, they're like, yeah, we got one for you. Somebody came by, one of the bus drivers or something like that, and they were making jokes about burning holes in it. So we traded them a whole bunch of yo-yos for it. It's yours. I'm like, what? It's killer. So I've held this thing ever since. I wore it for many years and needs some good washing now. It's got some mold on it, but yeah, really cool souvenir there.
That's cool, man. And it's made out of hemp, right?
Yeah. I think it's like supposed to be 80% maybe or something.
Wow.
If I remember correctly. I can't even read the label, man. It's too old.
That's cool, dude. Cool memories.
Oh, yeah. Wore that for many years. So I I don't know where you're going with the interview now, but I've got some other great stories. So I'll share a couple other stories if you like. So one of them was I remember driving from we were driving to Lake Tahoe, right? And we had the best bus driver. I mean, he was always in early, right? Because you're riding the bus while you're sleeping, right? So you get done maybe 6 or 7. We do our show. And then you'd have a bus call at, midnight, maybe 10 to 2 a.m., somewhere in there, so you can kill some time and go into town if you wanted to, or just hang out. And you'd have some time. So we get on the bus, and by the time you get on the bus, and then you play some cards or whatever you're doing, and then you fall asleep, and you wake up, and you're there. So our bus driver was really fast. And the one time we're going to Tahoe, and I remember everybody was struggling to stay in their bunks. I was on the high bunk, right? So I literally ended up taking my belt and strapping my belt around the bar inside of the bunk to not fall out because we were taking these turns so fast. Yeah. And we'd been, like you said, really hot summer, right? So, and it hadn't rained. It didn't rain until the very last day of the trip, which is another great story. I'll tell you in a second. But we're taking these turns, and it's just right. So we get up there, and I fell asleep at some point, and get up, and I walk off, and it's freezing. I'm wearing shorts and a T-shirt, right? We were just in San Francisco maybe or something, right? And it's freezing cold, so I had to put on pants, and there's ice caps everywhere on the mountains and all that. So that was one story. But the last day of the tour, this is my favorite story, or one of my favorite stories. We were done with our show. We'd go walk around and watch the bands play sometimes, whatever. We'd get on some stages and whatever. And so this show in West Palm was kind of a weird one. Eminem was there at this point. He came on later in the tour. And they had this no swearing policy in West Palm. We're kind of like, how's that going to work? Yeah. No swearing, right? Like a bunch of rock bands and stuff. Like, okay. And Eminem goes up there, and they shut his show down. So they pulled him off the stage early. And then I remember I'm watching Less Than Jake, who Steve was good friends with. So we hung out with them quite a bit and got on their stage quite a bit. They had invited us up. And so everybody had super soakers and all that stuff. So we're up on the Less Than Jake stage, shooting all the audience and throwing out stickers and yo-yos and all that stuff. And there were 2 security guards at the front corners of the stage. And we're like, this is super weird, Like, whatever, we're doing our thing. First song goes by, next song starts up. The security guards come over, like, what is going on? And they start stripping. Less Than Jake had hired 2 male strippers to pose as security guards. Like, what? So they started dancing. They did this whole dance for the whole show. And then we just kind of, we kind of ended our stuff early. It was the last show, and I'm kind of wandering around, and I'm watching Bouncing Souls. And it was literally the last show, last band, pretty sure it was the last song. And I'm watching them. It hadn't rained all summer long, right? I'm watching them play. And I look over, and I'm kind of by the sound booth. And I look over, and the cops are talking with the sound guys. And there's this storm rolling in. You can see it right off in the distance. You get talking, kind of this argument, and it seemed like it seemed like they were saying, oh, we're almost done, we're almost done. Somebody trying to shut them down. And there's kind of argument, and next thing you know, the sound cuts off. And Bouncing Souls were just standing on stage like, what the heck, And then all the kids in the audience start turn around and see that the cops had shut down the sound stage and start throwing water bottles at the cops. And it was kind of pandemonium, And then the storm comes, rain comes, and everybody runs away. And that was the end of the tour.
Last day, last show.
Not raining the entire summer. Yeah, and it was hot. So we had one indoor venue. It was so hot. There's a couple for you.
Yeah, I can imagine that was a miserable, what a hard gig. And yeah. At least the bands got to be in their vans or something. Y'all were outside the whole day.
The yo-yo string ball that I believe is in Chico, is it not? Do you know anything about that?
Is it not? It might be, yeah.
Ball, the string ball, I'm pretty sure it's in the museum in Chico, or it was at some point. That was my idea because we all brought 1,000 bundles, right? Because it was a long tour and it was hot and sweaty, but it was so humid that we was constantly changing strings. So we started generating these piles of string everywhere. So I was like, let's start making a string ball. So we just started wrapping them, and as the tour went on, right, and last I saw it was somewhere in that range, and I think it was taken to be in the museum in Chico. That started on the Warped Tour. I'm not sure it's still there. Yeah, maybe, probably.
So you are still you're still in Florida. You're not still working for Greg, but you told me earlier that you're still teaching like yo-yo shows every now, or yo-yo classes. What's that?
Yeah, no, well, during that whole time period, with the yo-yo boom happening, I was running the local yo-yo club. So I ran a club in Tallahassee, Florida. Did great. I mean, for that year leading into the Warped Tour. So I guess, summer 98 to 99, basically, I ran a competition a month and local, and by the end of it, I had 160, 70 people out for a little local competition, so it was really booming. So I did that. And then I went on the Warped Tour, and then I left for Europe for a month. And then I came back, and the yo-yo scene was flat. In town, locally at least, it was flat. But I think the boom had pretty much subsided. So that generated a lot of people like you that were, that carried on and built this big community and the years that followed. But the market was flat comparatively, And I guess in that time period, a lot of people had been wanting to get into doing more juggling stuff. So it was like, okay, well, we'll get the juggling club going. Mm-hmm. So when I came back in 99, a Pokemon had taken over. It's the way I remember it. I come back and Pokemon was all the rage and the yo-yo scene was like flat. I was like, what? How did that happen? And then that's when I started running the juggling club. And I kept doing that for a long time. I was doing yo-yo. We did Southeast Regional Yo-Yo Competition for a while. I was part of that for a little bit. But then I kept doing the yo-yo club thing. And then after finishing college, I went to Atlanta and I ran an after-school yo-yo program doing the Dale Oliver Patch Award system. Old school. And then I did that. And then I came back and I've been working at a high school called Sale in Tallahassee, which is kind of an alternative high school. We had a Tai Chi class when I started teaching there. So I figured, well, if you have Tai Chi, we could have juggling. And so I was running an after school club, but there's only about 400 students. So it's pretty hard to get a large number to stick around. So I started generating a plan for a class, for an actual program. And I sold it to the administration, and I've been running 2 classes of mixed prop juggling, including tops and yo-yos, for over 10 years, probably 12 years, something like that now. It's been great. 30 kids per class, more or less, pretty small this year, but usually about 30 kids per class, and it's a big thing. I get some really good kids coming out of there. I've got a student that's in the FSU circus right now who's crushing, mostly club passing, but yeah, good stuff.
And you teach Skin the Gerbil as part of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, my system's built on trick lists. I've got different lists for each prop kind of thing, and sort of a yo-yo list. And in the 1A, I guess, right, string trick section is what I'd call it. Is what I renamed Gerbil as as probably the most appropriate name for a school program. But yeah, that's in there. It's definitely like one of the tricks that I remember real well being just kind of this classic great trick. It's got a lot of flow to it, man. So yeah, that made the list for sure. It's also got Ouija bow on it, and like atomic boingy, and put some Eli hops on there. Stuff from back when I was really into it. That's kind of, I feel like that stuff is kind of the pinnacle of my time period, And then I like all the triangle stuff and suicide stuff. That was a little after my time, So yeah, but it's kids are impressed. I actually just taught that to a group of students like last week, I think. Right. And they were super impressed. They're super impressed and can't keep up with it.
Yeah.
Struggle to keep it moving.
Yeah, Gerbil is totally acceptable name for it. I recently put out a video where I was like, the whole original name was making fun of a trick called Skin the Cat, and then when Skin the Cat got renamed to Tidal Wave, I still had a trick called Skin the Gerbil, and it occurred to me at some point, like, actually, am I the one with the stupid trick name now? So like Gerbil is totally fine. Yeah, that's cool.
That was a great name. Really thinking about school stuff, like I take out the Diablos, I call stick releases, not suicides. It's just the nature of the beast.
I mean, I think stick release is kind of the common name in Diablo circles now. I don't think that they have like 2 names. I think they just call it that now. Names change sometimes, and that's cool.
Yeah. Back, like you do, like we learned a lot from books and videos, and there's certain things were defined and a lot of things were not back in the day, they were, I mean, I think I went back, as we were talking earlier, Dale Oliver stuff, those old VHS tapes. I don't know if you ever really got into those, but he had this old series of VHS tapes that had a lot of things defined, named, and it's kind of broken down. Like I remember going through and just learning a 1.5 mount, just the mount itself, not thinking about it in terms of a whole trick. And that was kind of the first time I'd seen yo-yo broken that way, or systematically kind of taken apart into individual elements. I mean, Mark tried to do that with the Yonomicon, I guess, but I'm not sure how well that took off, or caught on. But
yeah, I definitely watched those videos when I was working at the kiosk. We had a TV, with a VCR player in it, so those would just be on loop all day. And I still like thinking of elements, versus like I never really see someone do a full thing and go, I want to learn that entire thing. I'm always like, what was that one bit in the middle? Like, what was that part there or whatever? Yeah, that's always interested me.
Yeah, good stuff. And that's how about yo-yoing. I remember just from a split bottom out, here's all these things I can do, and then being able to freeform was really the joy of it. I think that's what I tell the kids now. It's like, learn some tricks, but really if you get to a point where you can just move between, understand the transitions and a lot of different things you can do from a trapeze, and that's what's really fun about it, not doing a predefined trick, in my opinion,
Lao, it's been great chatting with you. I learned a lot. I really didn't know anything about the tour or how that was kind of run. It was really, really fun chatting with you, though. I appreciate that. And, I do think that top players need to build that Lao statue. There should be a Kickstarter for that.
I don't know what's going on at the top scene. I'm sure I'm long forgotten. I might have a little end note somewhere in some books, but that's about it. I appreciate it. It was good talking. Super fun.
Yeah, dude. Thanks so much. And I'll chat with you later.
Yeah. Thanks. Wish you well, buddy.